name's Stan Piper. I'm with Socialist Action. I'm also with Mobilizing in Defense of Our Rights. There's many lessons that we can draw from what's happening to Jane Doe. One of the many lessons is that the state is not there to make things better for us, and it is not there to reduce harm. And in fact, it is the origin, it is the maintainer of many of the social ills that we deal with, many of the problems in our lives from day to day. We grow up kind of accustomed to the idea that prisons are there, that when you do something wrong, you go to jail, you go to prison. That's the natural order. You see science fiction movies, you see fantasy, you look at religion, you see prisons over and over again, as if it's always been that way and it always will. But in this country, prisons did not exist on any significant scale until after the Civil War and the abolition of slavery, because slavery was not actually entirely abolished. In fact, in the Constitution, it was not written into law until the 13th Amendment was passed. If you read the 13th Amendment, it says that a person cannot be forced into labor unless they are incarcerated. And that was the original use of prisons, was to replace the forced labor that had been lost, was to give people who were starting up factories in the South, people who had plantations or newly had bought plantations, was to put them into prison and to have them work as slave labor in prison. And they were actually cheaper because the person worked the factory, the employer did not have to pay for the labor. The person could just die working in jail, and they wouldn't have to worry. Whereas a slave owner, that's actually a loss of capital that they had spent. In fact, if you look at modern day prisons like Angola, they are plantations that are where old plantations used to be. This is where prisons come from. This is why they exist today. And if you look, when people talk about the economy, they're talking about your labor. They're talking about our labor. When they say there's a problem with the economy, there's a low rate of profit, investments are too risky. Part of what they're saying is that they can't make enough money off of our labor. And when that happens, they start trying to figure out ways to get us to work harder. And the state is the enforcer of last resort for these people. When they want us to work harder, they figure out ways of dividing us to bust our unions and other forms of organized activity that defends our standard of living. They figure out ways of making our lives more insecure. And that's exactly what they're doing with Jane Doe. Why are they so fucking obsessed with sexuality? Why is it such a big thing for them? Why do they feel that they can go into communities of color, specifically and most extremely African American communities, and just round up young men and women by the hundreds of thousands and millions and put them into forced labor? Why can they deport record numbers of people? Why do they feel the need to do this? One of the central reasons is because they want to find ways to get us to work harder. They're afraid that we're going to find a new way of living. And one of these ways of living that they're afraid of is other forms of sexuality that don't necessarily involve their plan. These are just a few of the lessons. I've been talking for a long time, but part of the reason why I'm part of Mobilizing in Defense of Our Rights is because that there are so many different kinds of attacks on our rights today that it becomes difficult to see the forest for the trees. When they're attacking people for their sexuality, for their gender identification, for the color of their skin, for their immigration status, for their country of origin, for their political beliefs, it's all part of one unified strategy. They say we're going after one person because they're an immigrant, another person because they broke the law, another person because they don't identify with the right gender, but it's all part of the same plan. And I'm thrilled to be here with you all today because I know that some way or other you understand this and that we can get together and we can fight back because they are coming after all of us, each and every one of us. And the more we understand that, the more power we will have in fighting back. Thank you very much.